From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Hi again, welcome to the show. Is trouble brewing in the city council? Is Mayor Emanuel losing his grip on his increasingly independent legislative body? With yesterday's wildly divided vote on the city budget, the mayor seems in danger of losing his ability to even pass important legislation in the future by a unanimous vote. Yes, indeed, this year's budget passed by a nail-biting 46-3, dramatically different from last year's more familiar and comfortable 50-0. So we've brought two veteran political analysts into the studio this week to help us understand why there's so much dissent on the city council, and hard as it seems to understand there were alder people yesterday who voted against Mayor Emanuel's bold plan to line our expressways with 100-foot-high digital billboards for, a few decades, thereby selling something to the private sector that even Mayor Daley couldn't put a price on: the air over little patches of city land. And maybe if we have time, we'll ask Mick Dumke and Andrew Patner to show us their concealed weapons, because I'm sure they must be carrying today. Have you got yours yet? It has been such a crazy week. The only thing we can do is call on a couple of old friends to come in and help us put perspective to the craziness. Mick Dumke, Chicago Reader. Andrew Patner, WFMT, Chicago Sun-Times. Happy birthday, WFMT. And Michael Farrow's two favorite employees from
can I
one
be an
of the
employee?
Yeah.
And I'm sure.
Right, from the great Sun-Times Reader family, as it were, yeah.
But you're really upbeat about things this week.
Yes, I'm feeling really upbeat. I mean,
you should know too that on the billboards, the mighty opposition was doubled from 3 to 6.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, that's right.
That was remarkable.
Showing.
Yeah. So I mean, this is no parking meter thing. There was more. Well, no, I think there were 6 votes against the parking meter too, if I'm not mistaken. 5. Yeah. So we're becoming. There's more backbone in the
Not that they're the same kind of thing.
Oh, I know. Mayor Emanuel would make that clear.
And Alderman Riley took on his former buddy Alderman Fioretti, saying don't make comparisons to the parking meters.
Right.
This isn't very good either, but it's different.
but it's
that
less,
basically what he
It's
said?
a different bad deal.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, what do you really? You have written extensively about this, and actually, I recommend it. Check it out in the Reader. But do you actually understand what these things are going to be? I mean, are they going to look like that? What is it? The Budweiser sign on the Kennedy Expressway? That giant thing that is that what it is? That kind of a digital sign?
I don't think so. I think they're going to be more like, it's not going to be a static billboard. The bottom line is the screen's going to be moving around. It's going to be, I think, like basically looking like a big TV screen as you're driving on the
Great
highway.
for driving.
Yeah, really.
And yeah, exactly. There's been all the discussion we've had about the finances of this and the whole idea of private, giving over public space to a private company for, as you said, 2 to 3 decades. But I don't think there's actually been that much discussion about the whole aesthetic part of this and even the safety part.
Right.
Well, I was talking to somebody this morning who was saying this is going to be so cool. Now people will be driving at 60 miles an hour, talking on their cell phones and reading billboards.
60 miles an hour through the city, that's pretty optimistic.
Well, I mean,
Mick, you had a remarkable,
5 miles an
the
hour.
whole story, the cover story of the Reader this week is excellent as ever, but you had a remarkable concluding section where the master of finance, alderman for 40, how many years? 3 years?
Are we talking about
Ed
Dick
Burke?
Bell here?
No, Ed Burke.
Oh, Ed Burke.
And chairman of the, says,
yes.
I don't think we really understand what this is.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
As he pushes it through.
Right.
Well, I think this was a advance over a few years, because remember when the parking meter deal, not that it was the same kind of thing.
Right.
Remember when that was up before the city council, remember Dick Mell stood up and said, we try to read everything we do, but let's face it, we don't get to it all.
We don't get
So now this time Ed Burke says,
turn.
I actually read through it and I don't understand what the heck it said.
Exactly. And when Ed Burke looks you in the eye and says, I read this contract and I don't understand this contract, whoa, we've reached a whole new level. But as long as we're talking about the venerable city council, it was, wasn't it the venerable Dick Mell who said, of privatization. Hopefully there's more to be coming down the line. This is just the beginning of the future for the city of Chicago. He apparently said that yesterday.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. I was there.
I think I lifted the quote
yes.
from you, so yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. But he's right about that. I mean, as Andrew noted, I wrote this long piece for the Reader this week that tries to put the Billboard thing in some perspective. And bottom line is that the city has a whole initiative in place to engage in more what it calls municipal marketing, which is basically corporate sponsorships, putting up ads in public space, even potentially getting sponsors for city programs and city departments, which I think is, leasing, selling off an asset is one form of controversy. When we start going into getting sponsorship for things that taxpayers believe that they should be getting from the city anyway, that's kind of crazy.
Could we just spend a second or two talking about the city's budget, which did pass yesterday overwhelmingly, and it did seem to be relatively uncontroversial. It seems like they actually did a pretty good job putting this budget together. I mean, we love to rail on about these things, but I didn't see very much opposition from anybody. I mean, everybody's got their little picky thing, but the general stewardship of the city of Chicago seems like they did a pretty good job putting a budget together. Would you buy that?
Why doesn't Mick go first? I will.
Well, I think that nobody has any alternative ideas. I think that's really what it comes down to. I mean, it could be a good budget. People seem satisfied because it doesn't raise taxes, in part because the city is, again,
it's not ones that are visible.
Right. That's exactly right. Instead, we're engaging in things like municipal marketing. But they're, in fairness, the Emanuel administration, not everybody likes this either, but they have done some things to kind of reduce the size of government and focus on core constituencies. These are the kind of buzzwords around there. But the bottom line is, Ken, what you're asking is why, again, when there are only 3 people voting no, when you're looking at a budget, $6 billion, I think when you throw in grants and everything, it gets up above $8 billion. Really, there wasn't anything in there that you had an issue with. It's kind of troubling. And I think the problem is there is no independent analysis of the budget that's done. I mean, the mayor.
Why would you want that? I mean,
this is
there you go
really
with logic again,
this is the overall crisis in the city and the state. There are 2. One is a total 3. One is a total lack of leadership. We have an accidental governor who either can't or won't do anything about anything, except defend a lawsuit trying to keep reporters out of the state prisons, which WBEZ and others, Robert Wildeboer, finally got some movement on. We have no independent criticism within the state legislature in either house or in the city council. We have 2-3 people, God bless them. Wagas, Pacarina, and Fioretti seem now to be the core.
Since Joe Moore quit.
Yeah, Joe Moore totally
Is he still
quit.
in the council?
He's still in the council. Leslie Hairston, Pat Dowell, and total corruption. Corruption on a level we haven't seen since the 2 dailies put together. To me, the biggest scandal, bigger than people not talking about the budget, is the combination of things going on with the janitors union at O'Hare. You have the dismissal of a union after this guy's been going around campaigning for his former boss, saying, I'm free. The day that Obama's in Michigan saying we need unions and we can't kick out unions, he kicks these unions out. This guy is Richard Simon. He is mobbed up.
Allegedly.
He is corrupt.
Allegedly.
I don't know what allegedly is a wiggle word, and it doesn't defend anything. So I mean, if you want to add allegedly, that's fine. But I mean, this man refused to go before a grand jury about where did his boss's lady friend disappear to, whom he had seen the night before. The man makes payments. We know that; those are recorded to Ed Burke. He gave $40,000 political budget of a man who's never had opposition for the city council. His social friend is the chief of police, who doesn't even come from Chicago. Why is Gary McCarthy even know Richard Simon? let alone they are friends. I don't understand. I mean, I'm absolutely, it's like one of those 50s movies or The Godfather meeting. Well, do you have the judges? Yeah, we got the judges. We have the judge for the Kashmir case because he stands up there and he sits up there on the bench and he makes a speech, a voluntary speech. I worked for Daley. I worked for Daley's political campaign. I worked for Richard Devine. I ran his political campaign. I worked for Anita Alvarez. The mayor put me on the CTA board and gave me municipal bond work, but I can be completely impartial. I mean, we just have lost sight that there's anything ever to be ashamed about. I'm sorry for ranting, but I'm astonished that
Okay, well,
there's
thanks
nobody
for joining us today.
Have a good life. Don't shoot yourself in the head.
And that
please.
concludes this edition.
Donnie Trotter, where's the shame? Where is this man has never left his house without wearing the most beautiful clothes, and he has, and as someone
Now you
as
know
a
how he
member
could
of the
afford them.
prematurely
He had a
white-haired
side
club,
job.
he has the most beautiful hair,
Right.
but he doesn't know that he's carrying a gun to O'Hare Airport, and he's, Mark, what was it? Mark Brown today said we may face a first even for Chicago, where somebody seeking slating from the Democratic Party is going to come with his lawyer, so that he doesn't have to answer questions from these committeemen.
Yeah.
And I hope he doesn't have his garment bag with him when he.
Well, he'll have his garments.
Yeah.
Will they remember the gun this time? For slating? That's what we really want to know.
I'm not quite sure how to come back.
Move on
from-
to the
from
next
that.
topic.
Well, no, I mean,
guess,
I think the bottom line is here, Andrew's is your passion is not only noted but completely understandable. I mean, I think the outrages come just in such a steady stream that it's easy to just it's just easy for a lot of us to just say, well, that's just kind of the way it goes. Here we go again.
Yeah.
Anytime you zoom in on anything, and I know, yes, I've been writing a lot about the Billboard deal. We're trying to move on, but it's like you zoom in. It's like the people who put this together. It's these law firms who get city work, and now they're working for the contractor in this deal for 20, 30 years. And it's like they're working both sides of it. They're lobbyists, The
vice president of the library board says, she didn't realize it's a conflict that she makes her money from the library.
I mean, it goes on and
And she
on
was a
on.
former building commissioner. Too,
Right.
so, yeah.
So it goes
could-
on. Right. We
yeah,
can
but
become
then
deadened.
People don't even know what to get outraged about. Honestly, it's just kind of like. Meanwhile, most people are just trying to get from home to work and hope that the CTA doesn't break down on the way. They're not even worried about a guy who was on the CTA board 15, 20 years ago and now is overseeing potentially a murder trial, homicide trial. They're just like.
Involuntary manslaughter.
I can barely not even get to work.
I do want to stick with this O'Hare contract, though, because I find that one to be just of particular. You said, where's the outrage? I find myself pretty outraged by this. We seem to be okay as a society, as a culture, saying we had these folks who were middle-class people who were being paid by us to clean the nation's sometimes busiest airport. And it's a big job, and it's a tough job, and as far as anybody can tell, they pretty much did the job pretty well. And then we say, well, you know what, we could do this a hell of a lot cheaper, so why don't we just get rid of them and get some cheaper people in there? And then that's not cheap enough, and it's time to get rid of that company and bring in somebody who will fire all of those, bring in non-union. I know this is very controversial, and I'm sure that a lot of people who are watching us disagree with this and think that it's a good thing for them because ultimately they might save a few dollars in taxes, they think, by essentially...
But let's address the save a few dollars in taxes question. 2 days ago, Simon's company put out, he won't speak to reporters, put out a statement.
We should say he's the guy in the middle. He was the guy who had the contract, who was the first
he's
privatizer.
the guy who has the contract now.
Right, that's what I'm saying. He was
Right.
the first privatizer, but now the city wants to take it away from him and give it to a third company.
They have. When did they say that?
Is that not correct?
No.
I think he's the guy who's in
He's
line
the
to
guy.
get it.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's okay. All right.
He's the guy who's got it.
It's confusing.
I'm
All right.
sorry.
Well, in
And
any
he's
event,
subcontracting
2
and
days
so
ago
forth.
he put
It's
out a
subcon-
statement.
right,
People
right.
put out a statement. He is a fine gentleman, blah blah blah, and he's going to save the taxpayers $10 million.
Right.
Yesterday he put out a statement because the charges continued, and he said he's going to save the taxpayers $7 million. So is today he going to put out a statement that he's going to save the taxpayers $5 million?
His legal expenses just went up $3 million. So,
That's right.
And then when the bills come in, are we going? Well, because the mayor will not act on this. What is it called? Fair bidding code.
Yeah.
That requires bidders to be clean and to show a history of paying fair wages.
Well, I mean, you saw a very interesting development yesterday with Jorge Ramirez from the Chicago Federation of Labor breaking with the mayor.
Somebody lit a fire under that man.
Standing with the mayor largely on many of these union issues, and
This is
saying
the head
that,
of the Chicago Federation of Labor.
The head of the CFL saying 350 union people are going to lose their jobs, and he made some statement about these are the hills upon which we are supposed to die, and we will. I mean, so. But I don't know. I don't exactly know what it is I want to say about this, other than just that I think that everybody is harmed when the whole system begins to devolve. It's not just those people who lose their jobs. It's all the people whose it's their families, and all the people associated with their families, and all the people who do business with their families.
Well, yeah, put it this way. I mean, we've been hammering on the corruption stuff for good reason, but I think what you're getting at is there is another set of complicated issues here, apart from even whoever gets the contract. Set that aside for a moment. The bottom line is we're outsourcing more middle-class jobs. We're downsizing more middle-class jobs. We're making them lower-class jobs. We're making them below living wage kinds of jobs. And we've taken a look at this. The city, for instance, in its move toward efficiency over the last few years, has shed thousands of jobs.
Thousands.
I think it's just like 1,000 in the last year alone. And when you look at the map of where these employees disappeared from, they're neighborhoods on the south and the southwest sides, primarily, west side. Not coincidentally, these are some of the same neighborhoods that have had these skyrocketing foreclosure rates. And so the question is,
and we talk about the
these are black and
disinvestment in
brown
these
people.
communities, right?
And so
that disinvestment in these communities is being done largely in our names by the people we elected to cut our taxes.
And you know what the worst thing about it is? I think it's costing us money. I mean, we need to do a thorough study on this.
Because we don't have taxpayers.
Right.
Exactly. And so in the move to save a few bucks here and there on wages, we're basically gutting middle-class neighborhoods, which is costing us more.
And there's another
else.
issue that you alluded to and that Mick is underscoring here, and that is, yes, there certainly can be and should be disagreement and debate about this. What's right to work
Absolutely.
or not? But we have a mayor who ran on an Obama platform. We have a mayor who ran saying, I'm for the middle class. If we had a mayor who ran as a Republican or as a libertarian, then you could say, as I think people have said to people in Wisconsin and Michigan, you're upset about these laws, you voted for these people, these are your legislators. Alderman Wagaspak has come right out and said the man is a hypocrite. Mr. Rivera says my relationship with him is schizophrenic. He has said one thing just as recently as the election campaign, the federal election campaign, and he's doing another. That, to me, is very, very problematic. If someone said, I'm going to run to get the unions out of Chicago and cut the government so that we can get jobs out of the west side and the south side, well, then you'd say, well, you voted for him. But that's not what people voted for.
And I do think that, and then I will get off of this, but the sort of the third leg of the stool is that when you get right down to it, when you take a government function and you privatize it by giving it to a fairly substantial corporation with the pockets that allow it to be able to do something the size of a government operation, you're paying that corporation a lot of money. And the people who own and have shares in that corporation all have to get paid, which is all money that would have been kept within the government system beforehand. So,
I think there are a lot of economic arguments can be made and can be discussed about that. They're not being made and they're not being discussed.
And that's not to say that I'm anti-business. I'm totally and completely in favor of the private sector.
Yeah, and you know what? We are overtaxed. I mean, who's here going to stand up and say, I want to pay more taxes? I mean, we don't, I think most
Donald
citizens.
Trump.
Well,
no, he didn't.
I mean, just even looking at the local
Right.
level, I think most people feel overtaxed and they don't understand where their money goes.
Right.
I mean,
And they don't understand where the money comes.
Yeah.
That to me, brings all these things back, right?
Right.
We don't have somebody explaining the budget to people. We don't have critics asking questions, even if they're going to vote for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you know, that raised the whole question of the David Orr calculator. You guys wrote about that recently? That you can now plug in your tax bill and you can see actually how much of your money went to the Chicago Public Schools and how much of it went into a TIF, which is absolutely startling when you look at some of the numbers there. But anyway, we've talked about that many times before. Can we stay with the Anita Alvarez thing? The Kochman case and her recent embarrassment on national television on 60 Minutes. Are we coming to a point where where Anita Alvarez is? I think the Sun-Times asked the question: is her brand being tarnished or something along those lines? Are we seeing her falling from favor?
Well, when was she in favor?
Yeah,
I mean, she won. She's
won 2 elections.
Well, she won a
quite
hotly
handily.
contested election 4 years ago in a crowded field, and she ran the smartest campaign while the other guys, and they were all guys, seemed to be getting chippy with one another. She kind of took what seemed to be a high road and won. And then this last time, she didn't have a credible opponent. I don't think she had a primary opponent at all, did she?
Not at all.
And then
that's
she
right.
obviously beat the Republicans. So. But your question is a good one. It was a bad week for Anita Alvarez, or you can just say it was a good week for shining a spotlight on, you know, her explanations or lack of explanations for some of the things that office has done.
Wrongful convictions, non-prosecutions, bungled prosecutions. Other than that, things
Other
are
than
going
that.
fine.
And of course, we don't even know where the Kochman thing is going to. Dan Webb is still apparently investigating, and he might start actually looking into whether or not they covered up.
Well, he has been looking into that.
Yeah.
He's made that very clear. We'll have to see. I don't think predictions are ever wise, but a lot of people from the state's attorney's office, past and present, and the police department, past and present, are talking to defense lawyers, and I think they're not wrong to be doing that at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that someone was charged obviously shows there's been a little movement on this, 8-year-old case.
Right.
Finally, at least a couple questions are going to be answered, you'd hope, in a court of law, but it's just the beginning. I mean, why has it taken 8 years to get to this point? And we don't know if the guy's guilty. Let's be fair. That's what the process is for. But the point is, there hasn't been a process.
It seems to be much less about him and about how
the
he was
system
protected.
responded or
Right.
didn't respond. Absolutely.
Right.
That is the whole issue, I think.
And we then have something that has come up truly accidentally through random selection, but a reminder of how many of our judges come out of the system of our state's attorney's office, which has rarely been, Ms. Alvarez is just exposing it more perhaps, but it's rarely been a place of great judgment or ability. And at the top level, there's some very fine people who work for the office, obviously. But when you have the randomized computer give the assignment to someone who's close with former Mayor Daley, former State's Attorney Devine, and current State's Attorney Anita Alvarez, the Sun-Times editorial, which I think makes a lot of sense, says do what was done when the Burke family adoption case came up and a judge was brought in from Kane County assigned by the Illinois Supreme Court, and they called on Chief Judge Timothy Evans, who doesn't have a close relationship with the Daley family, as of course it turns out, to call on the court to pick an outside judge so that everybody can feel comfortable, including Mr. Vineco. I mean, there's no reason that he should want to be found guilty or found not guilty in a trial presided over somebody where people will say there was a fix-it.
Either way,
Absolutely.
Either way, they'll say.
So the
Right.
paper asked both Mr. Webb and Richard J. Daley Vineco, lawyers, to ask for this switch.
Yeah, I mean, what you're getting at is the degree to which the entire criminal justice system here is politicized. And maybe that's obvious, but here we have another example. And I think the question is, where are you going to find a judge in Cook County who doesn't have some sort of connection
Right.
to the state's attorney's office, to the Daley family? to somebody who's an ally of the Daly family.
Daly and Devine had that office for many, 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 many years, so it would be impossible to come up in
Well,
the
that's why they
system.
suggested a downstate judge or an out-of-state judge.
Yeah. So, a couple of minutes left. You guys want to talk about concealed carry? Does it matter?
I'm packing.
You know, I know you're packing, Andrew. I know.
I'm like Laura Washington, our friend and colleague. I am a wimp when it comes to guns.
Right.
I do have an expert rating from 1973 from the National Rifle Association from now defunct Camp Minocqua, but that was the last time I ever held a gun except at amusement parks. I was scared to death that I was a good shot.
So what do you think? I mean, isn't this one of these cases where it's just sort of like we've just come so far that it just doesn't matter anymore? Everybody wants to have a gun, has one.
In
right?
some ways, I find it comforting. I am not a gun guy. Let's make that clear.
Well, that makes three of us.
Exactly. But I mean, I sort of proceed from the assumption that there are people carrying already.
Right. Like
illegally.
Donnie Trotter, for example.
Exactly.
Right.
Like elected officials.
Concealed
right?
even to himself.
That's right.
Right.
So the idea that people, at least some people, are going to formally go through training and have to register and whatever, I actually think is probably a step in the right direction.
Well, but the opinion, as Judge Ann Williams, who wrote the dissent, which is worth reading and is longer than the opinion of Judge Posner, as Judge Williams points out, the opinion gets to that point through absurd reasoning, and as Mark Brown and others have written, fine, draft a law that would have these things that you're talking about, Mick. Don't start from the assumption that everything's hunky-dory. Judge Posner based his decision on the long tradition that you have a right to protect your home. Where does having a right to protect your home mean that you can walk around into somebody else's home?
Right.
And here, Mayor Emanuel, I think, was absolutely correct when he said those judges, particularly in the federal courts, are not aware of the world outside their courtroom. I mean, one of their brother judges was shot to death on the bench in his own courtroom in the Daly Center, 7, 8, 9 years ago? I mean, so this idea that this is just something to be reasoned about in the Posnerian academic manner, I think that's what has shocked a lot of people. Not that we don't need to come in to line in some way with other states.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I
That's
think
okay.
the only thing I would disagree with you on there is that I don't know if the law makes a difference. I don't know if a law in place would have stopped the nutbag from walking into the courtroom with a gun.
Probably not.
I don't think it would have made a difference. And so I'm in favor of let's put a system in place where more people are likely to get training, more people are likely to register their weapons, and there's at least a structure in place. I think it's easier to I think it's easier to control guns if you have it legalized in some way with a structure in place. Now, people are still going to break the law.
So you are for the legalization of marijuana, is what you're saying.
I am for that on a separate issue.
So we have the Dumke Billboard law, and we will have the Brown Dumke concealed
let's
carry
advertise
law.
guns and marijuana on the
On the
highways,
billboards.
and everything
There
will be
you
in
go.
good shape. Yeah.
Well, beer was advertised for decades on the highways, right?
Yes, it was.
So
Yes,
Will
it
be
was.
again, I believe.
Will be again.
Yeah.
Okay, responsibly.
All right, so there you are.
The world isn't that bad, everybody. The world isn't that
Wait,
bad.
what
There's
should
still
we like
people
quickly
Ken
have some?
and Andrew who are fighting the good
Mick,
fight.
let's have and Ben Jarofsky, your colleague. I mean,
We don't even
we have
have
any
the
good
30
news?
seconds for like
Not
a
even
piece
30
of good
seconds
news,
for
a
good
dollop of
news.
good news at the end of the show.
Okay.
But you have been watching Chicago Newsroom right here on CAN TV with Andrew Patner of WFMT and the Chicago Sun-Times, and we're so glad you're back, and you got to come back again next year. And Mick Dumke, of course, with the Reader. Favorite? Oh, come on! I just caught that. You've been watching Chicago Newsroom. And Mick Dumke too. I'm Ken Davis. Watch us on this. This is right here. Watch us here, and be sure that you pick up the podcast too once in a while when you can. We'll see you next week with another program, hopefully just as entertaining and enlightening as this one. We'll see you then. Take it easy.